Hello and welcome. I am Pranay Upadhyay and you are watching Namaste World, your daily window into the biggest stories shaping India and the world. We begin in Asia, where China's sweeping seafood ban on Japan has escalated tensions and could unexpectedly benefit India. In Europe, Russia's Yantar spy ship is sparking alarm after targeting Royal Air Force pilots with lasers near UK waters. And in India's neighborhood, Nepal is on edge once again after Gen Z protesters clashed with KP Oli's party leaders, prompting a curfew and raising fresh concerns ahead of next year's elections. And the biggest news of the day, Prime Minister Narendra Modi arrives in Johannesburg for the first Africa-hosted G20 Summit. The Prime Minister is set to push Global South priorities and meet key partners. India and Afghanistan will soon launch air cargo service, boosting trade as Kabul invites Indian investments with incentives and renewed economic cooperation. All that and more. Global flashpoints, power plays, and the stories that matters coming up in this edition of Namaste World. Prime Minister Narendra Modi has arrived in Johannesburg to attend the landmark 20th G20 Leaders Summit. This is the first ever G20 meeting hosted on African soil. Running from today until 23rd of November under South Africa's presidency, this summit carries the powerful theme Solidarity, Equality and Sustainability, building directly on the outcomes from India's 2023 New Delhi Summit and last year's meeting in Brazil. Prime Minister Modi, in his departure statement, called it a particularly special summit, highlighting that it was during India's presidency 2 years ago that the African Union became a permanent member of the G20 grouping. The Prime Minister Modi said in his statement that India will present the perspective guided by our ancient principles of Vasudhaiv Kutumbakam, one earth, one family and one future. On the sidelines, Prime Minister Modi will also join the 6th IBSA Summit with Brazil and South African leadership and meet members of the large and vibrant Indian diaspora as well. While the Global South firmly at the center of discussion, expectations are high on fresh initiatives on issues that matters most for the developing nations. We bring you all the key developments from Johannesburg as the summit unfolds. Stay with us. In a major boost to India-Afghanistan ties, air cargo services between the two countries are set to begin very soon. While addressing a business chambers event in New Delhi during the visit of Afghanistan's acting Commerce and Industries Minister Al-Haj Nuruddin Azizi, Joint Secretary in India's External Affairs Ministry Anand Prakash announced that the air freight corridor on the Kabul-Delhi and Kabul-Amritsar routes has been activated and cargo flights will commence shortly. He said this will significantly enhance connectivity and further strengthen bilateral trade and commercial ties. The two sides have also agreed to post trade attaches in each other's embassies and to reactivate the Joint Working Group on Trade, Commerce and Investments. Current bilateral trade stands around $1 billion, with both countries eyeing much higher growth through the greater business involvement. Meanwhile, Minister Nuruddin Azizi extended a warm invitation to Indian investors and industrialists to invest in Afghanistan, highlighting huge opportunities in mining, agriculture, rice processing, pharmaceuticals, healthcare and energy sectors. He said Kabul is offering a 5-year tax rebate to investing companies along with preferential tariffs and machinery and raw materials. The Afghan minister also urged two Indian energy firms that had paused operations to restart their projects in the country. Clearly, a new chapter of economic cooperation is opening between New Delhi and Kabul. Indian seafood stocks shot up, all because China is preparing to block seafood imports from Japan. That move could reroute global demand overnight and hand Indian exporters a massive opening. With China-Japan tensions at a boiling point, is India about to land in one of the biggest export opportunity yet? Here is a report by Rudrashish Kanjilal.
Indian seafood stocks surged up to 11% on Wednesday, and the trigger came from far beyond India's shores. Multiple media reports claimed that China is preparing to halt seafood imports from Japan, a move that could instantly reroute global demand toward alternative suppliers including India. And the markets reacted in seconds. If China really shuts its doors to Japanese seafood, India could become one of the biggest beneficiaries. Indian exporters have been squeezed hard by steep US tariffs, and the United States is still India's largest seafood market, supplying giants like Walmart and Kroger. But a sudden vacuum in China That could be the opening they have been waiting for. India exported $7.4 billion worth of seafood last year. Shrimp alone accounted for 40% of that value. But the US-bound shipments becoming costlier and slower, the industry has been hunting for new markets. And now, China might just be the jackpot. Shares of shrimp giant Avanti Feeds skyrocketed 11%, its biggest intraday jump in more than 2 months. Coastal Corporation, which earlier announced plans to increase exports to China, rose 5%, its sharpest climb since late October. If Beijing shuts out Japanese seafood, India's exporters may find themselves lifting off. But the story isn't just economic, it's geopolitical. These reports emerged as China-Japan tensions hit their most dangerous point since 2012, triggered by comments from Japan's new Prime Minister Sanae Takaichi on November 7th. She suggested Tokyo could consider military involvement if Taiwan were attacked. Beijing reacted instantly. China summoned Japan's ambassador. It warned its citizens to avoid traveling to Japan. And Chinese state media reported that releases of 2 Japanese films were being delayed.
近日，日本首相高市早苗公然发表涉台错误言论，从根本上损害中日关系政治基础，对双方经贸交流合作带来了严重负面影响。中方敦促日方本着对历史和中日关系负责任的态度，收回错误言行，切实履行对华承诺，为两国经贸合作创造良好环境。
China has tried to justify the potential halt as a precaution related to the monitoring of treated wastewater from the Fukushima nuclear plant, the same issue that triggered an earlier ban in 2023. Beijing only recently resumed partial imports, and now history may repeat itself. A geopolitical clash between China and Japan, a giant trade vacuum waiting to be filled, and Indian seafood exporters suddenly back in the game. If China pulls the plug on Japanese seafood, one thing is clear: India may be about to reel in its biggest catch in years. With Rudrashish Kanjilal, Bureau Report, India Today Global.
Britain is on high alert after a Russian research vessel, widely known as a spy ship, targeted RAF pilots with lasers near UK waters. The Yantar has a history of snooping around Britain's undersea cables. Is Moscow testing how far it can push the UK? Here is a report by Farhan Khan.
How serious is Russia's latest stunt with the Yantar? A ship Moscow insists is a harmless research vessel, but everyone else calls a spy ship. The Yantar has a reputation. It shows up near Britain's critical undersea cables, the ones that carry over 90% of the UK's data and trillions in financial flows, and behaves like it's on a treasure hunt for sensitive infrastructure. Now it's escalated. RAF pilots on patrol have been hit with laser beams coming from the Yantar. Yes, actual lasers at pilots in flight. It's dangerous, illegal in Britain, and in the words of Defence Secretary John Healey, deeply dangerous.
As I speak, a Russian spy ship, the Yantar, is on the edge of UK waters north of Scotland, having entered the UK's wider waters over the last few weeks. This is a vessel designed for gathering intelligence and mapping our undersea cables. We deployed a Royal Navy frigate and RAF P-8 planes to monitor and track this vessel's every move, during which the Yantar directed lasers at our pilots. That Russian action is deeply dangerous, and this is the second time this year that this ship, the Yantar, has deployed to UK waters. So my message to Russia and to Putin is this: we see you, we know what you're doing, and if the Yantar travels south this week, we are ready.
Healey's message to Russia and President Vladimir Putin was serious. If the Yantar drifts inside Britain's 12-mile territorial waters, things could get kinetic. This isn't even the first dramatic Yantar episode. Earlier this year, a Royal Navy submarine literally surfaced right in front of it. What worries Britain is the bigger picture. This looks like part of a long-running Kremlin mission to map and potentially threaten the deep-sea cables and pipelines that keep modern Britain functioning. And it fits a wider pattern. Russian drones snooping around Europe, warplanes wandering into NATO airspace, and fighters being scrambled in Estonia after Russian jets crossed its skies. As an island nation, Britain lives off these undersea cables and North Sea pipelines. They are vital but mostly unprotected, and NATO has now labelled them global critical infrastructure, which is a polite diplomatic way of saying if someone cuts them, things go very, very wrong. Experts say the Yantar is built for exactly this. It's officially a research ship, but in reality, it belongs to Russia's ultra-secret GUGI Deep Sea Directorate. On the surface, it's packed with high-tech gear. Under the surface, it can deploy remote-operated mini-submarines that can reach incredible depths, map cables, chop them, or plant devices for use during conflict. The Royal Navy is trying to counter the threat, including with a new surveillance vessel called Proteus. But many fear Russia has already collected years of intelligence on Britain's underwater lifelines.
So, Russia has failed in its military objectives over the course of this war. And so, as a result, what we have seen them try to do is to seek continually to escalate. We can see the approach that they're taking. We have no illusions about what they are doing. We see what Putin is doing, and we understand, and we will continue to be vigilant and determined in our response, just as we have been about incursions into NATO airspace, just as we are being now in terms of identifying the Russian spy ship in UK waters, and just as we have continued to be in response to sabotage threats that we have seen across many different European countries as well. It will not deter us from supporting Ukraine, quite the opposite, because we know Ukraine's security is our security. We will continue to stand with Ukraine because Ukraine has shown incredible strength and resilience in the face of Russian aggression, and I think Putin has repeatedly underestimated Ukraine and underestimated the commitment and determination of Ukraine's friends.
Russia's latest aggression at sea may be more than simple provocation. It could be part of a long-running revenge narrative. In 2022, Moscow accused British Navy personnel of blowing up the Nord Stream gas pipelines and aiding Ukrainian drone strikes in Crimea. Claims London dismissed as epic-scale disinformation. With no evidence ever produced, the allegations were widely seen as an attempt to mask Russia's failures in Ukraine. Now, as the Yantar spy ship stalks Britain's undersea cables and targets RAF pilots with lasers, the timing suggests Moscow may still be settling old scores and testing British resolve. Russia, of course, denies everything and accuses Britain of exaggerating. But with the war in Ukraine still raging and Moscow increasingly confrontational, the Yantar's antics aren't just mischief at sea. They are a reminder that the next big clash might not happen on land or in the air, but quietly, deep under the waves. With Farhan Khan, Bureau Report, India Today Global.
Fresh clashes between Gen Z protesters and KP Oli's party, CP and UML cadres forced authorities to impose a temporary curfew in Nepal's Bara district. With elections just months away, the unrest is once again raising serious questions and concerns about Nepal's political stability. So what really drove this new flare-up? Here is a report by Jyoti Shukla.
Nepal is once again witnessing unrest, months after Gen Z protests forced KP Oli out of power. And this week, the tensions returned, centered around Simara in the Bara district, where authorities imposed a curfew after fresh clashes between Gen Z activists and cadres of former Prime Minister KP Oli's Communist Party of Nepal, Unified Marxist-Leninist. The violence erupted on November 19 near Simara Airport. According to multiple media reports, young protesters had gathered to oppose the arrival of senior Unified Marxist-Leninist leaders who were expected to attend an anti-government rally. What began as a demonstration quickly spiraled into stone pelting, scuffles, and then a harsh police response. Police fired tear gas and even carried out aerial warning shots to push back the crowds. At least 10 people were injured, including both protesters and police personnel. The situation got so volatile that Simara Airport temporarily suspended all operations. The district administration office stepped in quickly, imposing a curfew across parts of the Bara district to restore order. The curfew remained in effect until 8 p.m. on Thursday, November 20, as officials tried to stabilize the ground situation. Local authorities said they may shift to a lighter prohibitory order if calm continues, but for now, they remain on alert. Interim Prime Minister Sushila Karki has urged restraint, warning all parties to refrain from political provocation ahead of the March 5, 2026 elections. Her government is under pressure to maintain peace, especially after the deadly anti-corruption uprising earlier this year. To understand the anger on the streets, you have to go back to September 2025. That's when Nepal saw its biggest youth-led revolt in decades. The Gen Z movement. Triggered initially by a brief social media ban but later fueled by deep frustration over corruption, nepotism, unemployment and political stagnation. At least 76 people were killed in those protests, according to local reports, and the turmoil eventually brought down Oli's government. But the grievances never fully went away. Gen Z activists continue to demand justice for the protesters killed in September. Meanwhile, the Communist Party of Nepal, Unified Marxist-Leninist, has been holding rallies across the country calling for the reinstatement of the dissolved House of Representatives. This week's clashes in Simara show that Nepal's political wounds remain raw, and with elections just months away, the country's youth are making it clear their fight isn't over. With Jyoti Shukla, Bureau Report, India Today Global.
As we wrap up today's show, here is a quick look at the top stories making waves around the world. Mexico's Fatima Bosch wins the Miss Universe crown just weeks after a pageant executive called her a dummy. Japan's Prime Minister Sanae Takaichi unveils a 135.4 billion stimulus with tax cuts and major spendings, despite rising fiscal and market concerns. President Zelensky says Ukraine will discuss the US-backed peace plan with President Donald Trump, stressing diplomacy and stable military support despite internal criticism. And that brings us to the end of today's edition of Namaste World. From breakthroughs in technology and business to political developments and natural disasters. Stay tuned as we bring you the latest updates, key developments, and more from New Delhi to New York. See you again tomorrow at the same time right here on Namaste World.